Since we have already looked at the standard mode witches, of course we're going to be looking at the battle mode witches next. Most battle mode witches are quite similar to their standard counterparts, but we will see now that the elemental resistance mechanics actually coming into play as well now. So bosses are usually weak to certain elements, as always, but now they will on top of that also have resistance specifically against elements that they aren't weak to, and attacking them with such an element will reduce your damage by about 30%, which makes it a lot harder for your attackers to finish broken witches off if they are attacked with such a resisted element. On top of that, bosses will now also have resistance to ailments as well, usually against ailments from the elements that they are resistant to in damage as well. So for example, if a boss is resistant to dark damage, then they'll likely be highly resistant to curse as well. So starting off with the Rose Garden Witch, it is once again extremely straightforward, simply use a handful of AoE attacks, as well as some light poison and a damage down debuff on one of your characters. I hope you're not actually needing any help with this boss though. Next up we have the Darkness Witch, which also has very simple AoE attacks, a speed debuff on your team. It will however summon some adds to help it out on turn 2, and then attempt to buff the damage of those adds. The adds themselves also use only very simple attacks, shouldn't be too much of an issue. If you're still struggling, you may want to use an AoE breaker like Lux Madoka to break the adds and kill them before you can attack the boss again. The Desert Witch is next and will also summon some adds to help it out, this time on turn 1. And just like the Darkness Witch, the Desert Witch also uses only very simple attacks, some party-wide debuffs. One of the adds, however, will buff the enemies with attack up, and the other one will buff everyone with defense up. AoE breakers once again will come in handy, as they will on any boss with adds, so break both the adds and specifically focus the add that buffs attack first if possible to make this fight much easier. The add fights then continue with the Box Witch next, who both starts out with 2 adds and then will summon an additional 2 adds after a few turns. The fight plan for this boss is slightly different than the ones before this, as instead of trying to buff the enemy with various buffs or whatever, this time the boss will actually use the adds to apply damage over time ailments to you, like burn and curse, and then will do bonus damage and debuff you if you have ailments on you. Since the boss's most dangerous attacks require you to have ailments on you, you should either attempt to break and kill the adds as soon as possible before your team drowns in ailments, or you can have a healer like a Kaide or a 4-star Yuma to remove the ailments on you with their skills to counteract the boss's attacks. The next boss up doesn't have any adds, but instead fights you alone. So the Graffiti Witch is quite straightforward. She will just attempt to take more turns than you are by repeatedly attempting to stun your team, buffing itself with more speed and attack and just becoming more stronger as the fight goes on. The overall damage, however, starts out quite low, but increases as the fight goes on with the boss stacks getting higher. However, there currently aren't any preventative ways of like dodging stuns before they happen, apart from just getting lucky. So you could just keep trying and retrying the boss if you get too unlucky with stuns, because retrying doesn't actually cost anything. So you only need to get lucky once with the stuns and the boss will just fall over dead. Moving on with the Silver Witch, which is a quite defensive boss who will buff its own defense and apply a barrier to itself as well. At the same time, however, the boss's damage also scales with its own defense instead of attack as usual, meaning that the defense buff actually also increases its own damage. Additionally, the boss will attempt to apply the wound ailment to your party and then trigger bonus effect of delaying the turn of wounded targets. So if you happen to have a character that can reduce enemy defense like Ren or 4-star Ayame, or someone who can remove buffs like 3-star Hazuki or also 4-star Ayame, this boss should fall over very easily. And since we didn't have any add fights in a while, here's another one. The Shadow Witch doubles down quite hard on adds and will summon 4 of them on turn 1, with there being 2 types of adds among them. The boss will then use attacks that deal more damage and even delay action if there are multiple adds still alive, so it should be quite obvious that you must kill the adds as soon as possible. Because of this, load up as much as you can on AoE breakers like Mito and Ashley, and an AoE attacker like Oriko or 4-star Kushu, and just go wild. Even the adds themselves, by the way, also gain bonus effects if there are more adds alive, so don't allow them to live for longer than a turn if you can, and then the boss itself will just be easy prey. The Dog Witch goes in a complete opposite direction, so while the boss does summon 2 adds at the start, you don't actually want to attack any of those adds under any circumstance, because whenever an add is defeated, the boss will become more powerful and deal large damage to you, and additionally, if we even just damage the adds will also become more powerful as well. So even if the adds may be a little annoying, just get yourself a good single target breaker, focus only on the boss itself, should make this fight quite easy. So now we come to the Mermaid Witch, which works quite similar the way it does on normal, so similar strategies also going to be successful here. So since the boss will attempt to prolong the fight at any and all costs by just stacking buffs, reducing your MP, delaying your action, healing its own break bar, the best way to really deal with this boss is just go hardcore on breaking, using even 2 breakers at once. Maybe you want to even use action advance from something like a 4-star Hazuki and just break the boss at lightning speed. And if you can easily break the boss in just a handful of turns, the boss will be on low stacks and just take insane amounts of damage from you and won't be able to do much. Here's yet another ad fight with the Artist Witch, who summons 2 ads on turn 1 and after a few turns summons 2 more ads, which will actually be of a different type as the first 2 ads. So similar to the Shadow Witch, the boss will actually gain bonus lifts if ads are alive, meaning you once again need to destroy the ads as fast as possible. In this case, however, the boss is less aggressive and will instead spam some buffs on its own ads to make them more powerful while trying to just stall you out. The ads in the meantime will pepper you with some AoE damage here and there, apply some debuffs on you to weigh you down, and even try to remove your buffs, which can be quite annoying as well. And then the second set of ads that spawn are instead like single target bullies that can do a lot of damage to you if they are buffed. So as long as you understand that the ads always have first priority, you should always swap to them, destroy them with everything you have. If you do that, the boss itself will just be left wide open for your attacks afterwards. Next up, the Chairperson Witch has quite a few mechanics that like combines against you. So first, it gains more attack and speed the lower your SP is. So just don't let your SP drop too low for too long, like below 3. But the boss will also throw multiple ailments at you between curse and stun. It will delay your turns. It will even buff its own speed even further just to get more and more turns on top of you. Ultimately, however, this boss fight that, aside from the SP managing, mostly comes down to your team simply just being well built, well leveled, having decent magic levels, because your raw stats will do most of the carrying against this boss. And then the last ad fight of the release version is the Sandbox Witch, which in essence is actually quite similar to the Artist Witch. So just like that boss fight, the boss itself doesn't really do that much, but the ads can make the fight spiral completely out of control if they aren't dealt with immediately. That's because both the ads and the boss will apply stacks of shield to themselves, and while a shield stack is active, the boss will have greater attack, speed, and even resistance to breakage depletion, which also applies to the ads, by the way. Because of this, you have to immediately use single target breakers and attackers to take down any ad as soon as they spawn, so that they cannot use too many of those shields. Additionally, characters that can remove buffs, like 3-star Hazuki or 4-star Ayame, can prematurely get rid of enemy shields to stop the boss's special effects from happening at all. Also, you can use fast characters with high speed and speed buffs, as well as characters with follow-up attacks to just quickly take down enemy shield stacks if you don't remove them with buff removal. Okay, now for something completely different, it's Team KaMoRe next. So in this fight, you should first simply take down Kaede, because she will spam supportive abilities to buff and heal her allies, but is actually extremely squishy and goes down very fast. Afterwards, Momoko should be focused on, because otherwise she would gain a very large stat boost if she was the last person alive, while Reina also takes less damage while Momoko is alive, making it doubly important to take down Momoko second after Kaede. Momoko herself is a damage dealer and may use her special together with Reina after Kaede goes down, so get ready for a lot of incoming damage at this point. But if you can survive this onslaught and defeat Momoko, Reina herself should fall quite quickly afterwards as well. And now for a gimmick fight. The Commoner's Horse barely does anything, but it's extremely tanky and takes almost no damage. Instead, its defenses, however, will drop drastically if you can inflict it with any ailment. So once you manage to do so, it will become absolute pushover and one of the easiest bosses in the game. If you're having trouble landing an ailment, by the way, keep in mind that it has no resistance to curse because it's also dark weak. So a 4-star Hana, by the way, can make this fight very easy, as she doesn't even need to be of high level. The Birdcage Witch, however, can be a bit hard depending on your team and how you play it. First off, take Sayaka off your team, if you have her, because she will cause this boss to go Super Saiyan and absolutely kill you very fast. This is because this boss gains a stacking damage buff every time it takes damage, but this boss also resets those stacks after every single boss attack. Unless you have Sayaka, whose counters will prevent the stacks from dropping at all, so they just keep rising. The boss itself only has 2 actual attacks, both hitting multiple targets and one of them even trying to apply burn. So while this boss can hit quite hard, it also doesn't have any big tricks up its non-existent sleeve. You can simply just play a healer plus defender combo and the boss should struggle to finish you off, making this boss quite straightforward. Just don't use super fast characters. The Stagecraft Witch, on the other hand, is probably the most complex fight in the game. The boss has a passive mechanic where on odd numbered turns it deals a lot of damage and also takes a lot of damage, while on even numbered turns it takes and deals a lot less damage. Keep in mind that the boss always takes 2 actions per one of its turns, so you must count those 2 actions as 1 turn. Additionally, the boss will become resistant to breakage depletion and even heal itself while it has a barrier or some shield buffs active, so you have to either punch through them or use a buff remover like 3-star Hazuki or 4-star Ayame to counter this mechanic immediately. Apart from that, the boss will use a lot of high damaging attacks, various annoying effects on top of that like buff removal, debuff cleanse. On itself, it will use damage over time ailments against you. It even has an MP generation down debuff, it even has an attack and speed debuff, and an action delay on your entire party. All of these effects are of course extremely annoying, but if you can deal with the boss's shields and if you have enough sustain to heal through the boss's onslaught, you can just whittle down the boss's break gauge slowly over time, after which you have to just make sure to break the boss on a turn where it actually takes high damage and be able to take down the boss at that point. If you lose count, simply hit the boss with any of your characters and see how much damage you're doing, so you can always keep track of which turn you're on by just seeing how much damage you're doing with your normal attacks. This may require, by the way, even 2 breaks if you don't do enough damage, but while the boss seems a little unfair with all these effects, with decent healing and counterplay against the shield, you can usually just drag the fight out long enough to see the victory screen. My best fight, if you're using both a counter through the boss's shield and barrier mechanics, as well as a good healer, and you're still struggling, is to just see if you can further increase the magic level of your party, increase your character levels as well, as that will increase your character's HP and defense, and both of those can go quite a long way here of making you see more turns. And with that, we're almost at the end, but first we have to face Oriko and Kirika, the duo. So Oriko takes 2 actions per turn, while Kirika will just slowly hit harder as the fight goes on. Personally, I prefer taking down Kirika first to stop her from snowballing and also stop her from reducing the party's speed, which can be quite nasty. Oriko meanwhile will use a lot of supportive effects which won't be that powerful once she's alone, so she shouldn't put too much up of a fight once Kirika actually bites the dust. Finally, we have the Needle Witch, who can also be quite nasty. She will take 2 actions every 2 turns and takes less break gauge depletion while she has a barrier active, so those must be destroyed or buff removed immediately. More importantly, however, the boss will also attempt to put the burn ailment on your party, and every burning party member will make the fight much harder. That is because when a burning party member attacks the boss, they will not only deal reduced damage to the boss, but they will also get hit by a nasty counterattack. Additionally, both the boss's barrier, the boss's also action delay on your party, and the boss's big attack, all of those will be more powerful the more characters on your team are burning. So I highly recommend using a healer that can remove ailments on skill like a Kaede or a 4-star Yuma. But if you can keep all those burns under control, the boss will be severely weaker and lose most of its power. And with that, we've come to the end of the video, so thank you everyone for watching, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and I'll see you guys next time.